Can you hear me now? Great. So I think I had you put up here that it's John 19. It's not. It's John 9, 1 through 41 as our verse for this. Our verses for this week's gospel. We're using the gospel for year A. So I may have done this last year. I couldn't find my notes though. So maybe I didn't do this last year. Maybe we did something else. Or the year before. I don't know. But year A is used because we're doing the scrutinies. So we have candidate or catechumens. That is, people who are preparing for baptism this Easter. And when we have these catechumens, and they've gone to the bishop and they've become elect, now they're in their final stages of preparation. And so we have these rites called scrutinies, where they scrutinize themselves. They look at themselves. And I like doing these because they actually allow everybody, all of us, as in our preparation for Easter, to scrutinize ourselves, to take a look at ourselves, a good look at our hearts, a good look at our lives, and say, what am I doing? How am I doing? What do I need God to do? Because ultimately, right, the hero of the gospel is Jesus. The hero of the gospel is God, not me. The focus of the gospel is not on me. It's true that it's my salvation. But it's my salvation not because I should keep focusing on me, but because I'm focusing on somebody else. I'm seeing somebody else. And that's Jesus, who is the Messiah and Lord, our God, our Creator, who frees us from sin, saves us, and will give us eternal life so that we can live with Him and be happy with Him forever. Right, that last part comes kind of from the Baltimore Catechism, one of the first questions, so that's why I like that particular line, because it's sort of, they sum things up right away at the beginning. So we're in the fourth week of Lent this Sunday, and our reading is from the Gospel of John. And you might be saying to yourself, well, we're in the year of Luke, and it's true that we are in the year of Luke. But it's also true that when we get to Lent, we stop following Luke and we move into John for a bit. Why? Well, because there's only 3 years, and so we stick John in, the church sticks John in different places where it makes sense and where it helps us to make our journey, in this case, through Lent towards Easter. And so as we make our way in this fourth Sunday, we are in John's Gospel, whether we're in year 1, following the rite of Christian initiation of adults, which one of these days is going to be called the Order of Christian Initiation of Adults. In fact, it may already be called that, but I don't have the book that says that, and that means that I'm still calling it the RCIA, which is the Rite of Christian Initiation of Adults. And in the meantime, you just get a little more confused because I'm using another acronym instead of the one that's coming up, and it is what it is. So this is a long gospel. I'm only going to talk about some of it, only a few parts. I told you it would be short, it would be brief tonight. I'll do my best. I don't do brief very well, but we'll talk about briefly this gospel and pull out a few things. But the gospel itself is from verses 1 to verse 41 of John's gospel. So it's quite a long gospel. The Lord be with you. A reading from the Holy Gospel according to John. As Jesus passed by, he saw a man blind from birth. His disciples asked him, "Rabbi, who sinned, this man or his parents, that he was born blind?" Jesus answered, "Neither he nor his parents sinned. It is so that the work of God might be made visible through him. We have to do the works of the one who sent me while it is day. Night is coming when no one can work. While I am in the world, I am the light of the world." When he had said this, He spat on the ground and made clay with the saliva, and smeared the clay on his eyes, and said to him, "Go wash in the pool of Siloam," which means sent. So he went and washed, and came back able to see. His neighbors and those who had seen him earlier as a beggar said, "Isn't this the one who used to sit and beg?" Some of them said, "It is," but others said, "No, he just looks like him." He said, "I am." So they said to him, "How were your eyes opened?" He replied, "The man called Jesus made clay and anointed my eyes and told me to go to Siloam and wash. So I went there and washed and was able to see." They said to him, "Where is he?" He said, "I don't know." They brought the one who was once blind to the Pharisees. Now, Jesus had made clay and opened his eyes on the Sabbath. So then the Pharisees also asked him how he was able to see. He said to them, "He put clay on my eyes, and I washed, and now I can see." So some of the Pharisees said, "This man is not from God, because he does not keep the Sabbath." But others said, "How can a sinful man do such signs?" And there was a division among them. So they said to the blind man again, "What do you have to say about him, since he opened your eyes?" He said, "He is a prophet." Now the Jews did not believe that he had been blind and gained his sight until they summoned the parents of the one who had gained his sight. They asked him, "Is this your son, who you say was born blind? How does he now see?" His parents answered and said, "We know that this is our son, and that he was born blind. We do not know how he sees now, nor do we know who opened his eyes. Ask him. He is of age. He can speak for himself." His parents said this because they were afraid of the Jews. For the Jews had already agreed that if anyone acknowledged him as the Christ, he would be expelled from the synagogue. For this reason his parents said, "He is of age. Question him." So a second time they called the man who had been blind and said to him, "Give God the praise. We know that this man is a sinner." He replied, "If he is a sinner, I do not know. One thing I do know is that I was blind, and now I see." So they said to him, "What did he do to you? How did he open your eyes?" He answered them, "I told you already, and you did not listen. Why do you want to hear it again? Do you want to become his disciples too?" They ridiculed him and said, "You are that man's disciple. We are disciples of Moses. We know that God spoke to Moses, but we do not know where this one is from." The man answered and said to them, "This is what is so amazing, that you do not know where he is from, yet he opened my eyes. We know that God does not listen to sinners, but if one is devout and does his will, he listens to him. It is unheard of that anyone ever opened the eyes of a person born blind. If this man were not from God, he would not be able to do anything." They answered and said to him, "You were born totally in sin, and are trying to teach us?" Then they threw him out. When Jesus heard that they had thrown him out, he found him and said, "Do you believe in the Son of Man?" He answered and said, "Who is he, sir, that I may believe in him?" Jesus said to him, "You have seen him, and the one speaking with you is he." He said, "I do believe," and he worshipped him. Then Jesus said, "I came into this world for judgment, so that those who do not see might see, and those who do see might become blind." Some of the Pharisees who were with him heard this and said to him, "Surely we are not also blind, are we?" Jesus said to them, "If you were blind, you would have no sin. But now you are saying, 'We see.' So your sin remains." The Gospel of the Lord. And so you can see how this gospel would be a good thing for those who are preparing for baptism, preparing to go to water and be washed of all their sins. You can also see how people who are desiring to see what the Lord wishes to free them from, how the Lord wishes to free them from their blindness and give them sight, how the Lord wishes to free them from not just their darkness, but free them in the midst of a dark world, a world that is under the influence of darkness. Perhaps this is easier for us to see than it was just a few weeks ago. But this would be a good gospel for someone who wishes to be freed of darkness, can come to the light of the world. This is one of the I am statements that's in the gospel. Last week we heard, "I am the living water." This week we hear, "I am the light of the world." These I am statements are important in John's gospel because, of course, I am is the word for the name of God. Now, in the Greek, it doesn't seem quite as similar, and yet it's there. And St. John uses it over and over again in a way that makes us say, why does he keep saying that? What does this mean? And this is part of what St. John does in his gospel. He keeps these themes coming back, so that hopefully we see more deeply. There's another place where a blind man is healed by Jesus, and Jesus heals him, and he asks him, "Can you see?" So first he's blind, and then Jesus says, "Can you see?" having said, whatever he was going to say, done whatever he was going to do. And the man says, "I see people, but they look like trees." Right? So he's seeing, but everything is still fuzzy. And then Jesus does again something, and he can see clearly. In this gospel, Jesus does just one thing. And the one thing that he does is also very interesting, right? Because he takes the earth, the ground, he spits on it, something that comes from his mouth, which is the same place that the breath comes from. And saliva has sort of a sense that, maybe this is healing. Except in my family, where it has a sense of making something dirty so that you can't eat it and steal it from your brother's plate. I've mentioned that before. But in the ancient world, and even nowadays, many of us think of dogs as being, when they lick you, it's good for you, right? I'm not sure that that's true, but anyway, people think that. And so Jesus, from his mouth, sends out a type of water, or a type of something that comes from the same place as his breath, and he mixes it with the earth to make clay. And clay is important because, of course, we remember that in the beginning, after God had created all these things, he picks up the clay and he creates the man. And he breathes his breath into him. So this is an act of creation that Jesus performs. And in fact, somebody who has been born blind, why is it that physicians can't heal them? Why is it that we can say with confidence, nobody's ever been able to heal these people? Well, it's because there's something wrong with the apparatus. It hasn't been created well. It's not just that they poke themselves with a stick or something like that, but that somehow from their very birth something was missing. Something was wrong with their eyes. And so Jesus, nobody can fix that when there's something missing. And so Jesus fixes where there's something missing. Also, right, the image of light and darkness, which again is very common in John's Gospel, both of these things we find in the prologue, the creation of the world and light and darkness. We find them in the prologue already of John's Gospel. He's already saying, listen, I'm going to say some things over and over again. Pay attention now, because later you're going to hear this again. And so now Jesus says, while I'm in the world, I am the light of the world. Oh, does that sound familiar if you read the first chapter of John's Gospel? I'm not going to read it to you. You'll have to go and do that yourself. But in the beginning of the Gospel, it talks about the light, not the darkness being in the world and people loving the darkness more than the light. But the darkness will not overcome the light. Why does the darkness not overcome the light? Because darkness is a lack of light. Darkness isn't a thing. Darkness is a lack. Darkness means something is missing. So light always overcomes darkness because light is something and darkness is not. And so, Jesus, who is creation, who is God, who is something, and we who are created from nothing, and the blind man who is created from nothing, Jesus can take the clay and make an eye. Now, does it say that his whole eye was missing or something like that? It doesn't say any of that, but the language here gives us the language of creation. So what Jesus does, the blind man, the man who used to be blind, attests, nobody has ever done this before. Why? Because nobody but God can. Nobody but God can. This blind man, he says, they ask him, by the way, he gets sent to wash. He gets sent to the fount to be washed. Our baptism doesn't happen just by accident. We are not baptized simply because we happen to be of parents who are Catholic. We are not baptized because our parents wanted to force our faith down our throats. I know that people say this nowadays, but that's a little like saying, oh, my parents, they were so mean. They fed me their chocolate cake. They just forced it down my throat. If we understand what we're receiving, and we understand what our parents believe they're giving us by baptism, they're not forcing liver down our throat. Okay, so for some people, liver would be a bad example here. For me, it's a great example. It's not that they're forcing liver down our throat, it's that they're force-feeding us chocolate. What? How can you say that? How can you say that I was force-fed? Right? I was given the sweetest thing they have, the most wonderful thing they have. And if you don't like chocolate, you'll have to use something else to make that make sense. Maybe you'll even use liver, I don't know. But that something beautiful has been given. So our baptism is not a mistake. And what's more, our baptism is part of the sending of God. By our baptism, we are sent on mission. And this man is sent on mission. By the time he's done, he's explaining to the teachers what they should have known already. So he is sent not just to water to wash, he's sent with his sight to teach. And even to help his parents to not be afraid. Even to help his parents not be afraid. But he changes in the process of this gospel. First of all, he doesn't know anything, right? He can't see anything. And then he recognizes that there was a man called Jesus, which means God saves, by the way. There's a man. And then he says that man must be a prophet. So he's a man who's inspired by God. And then he says, no, this man was from God. And then, finally, when he actually meets Jesus, who he's never seen, finally, when he meets Jesus, he worships him. So the man born blind goes from a lack to a light. He goes from not knowing who Jesus is at all, not being able to even identify him, to identifying him rightly, exactly, precisely how we should by our worship. You know, of course, and I love this part where he comes before the Pharisees, and the Pharisees say, "Somebody healed you? Well, where is he?" You can hear the comic pause there. I don't know. I was blind when I saw him, which means I didn't see him. I don't know where he is. I don't know what he looks like. I don't know anything. I mean, there's this moment of like, Pharisees, come on, get with it, right? And that continues. But you know when the Pharisees appear that it's going to be a controversy about the Sabbath, because that's what they keep doing. They keep saying that he forgets the Lord's Day. One of the things about this, one of the things that this points to, is that the Sabbath was important to the Jews. In fact, the Sabbath was one of the signs that they were a covenant people. The pagans didn't keep holy the Sabbath, but the Jews did. The Sabbath was a privileged day for the Jews. And in fact, the Sabbath was recognized by some pagan societies, that the Jews should get their Sabbath. Oh yeah, those people. You can't talk to them that day. But it is a sign of the covenant. It is a sign of their relationship with God. And we let it go pretty easily. So I want to emphasize that, not just because the Pharisees are unreasonable about the Sabbath. They are. Okay? But because in their unreason doesn't come from nowhere. It comes from what the Sabbath means and what the rest means. And the fact that, in the end, we're aiming for a universal and an eternal Sabbath. An eternal Sabbath. So for those of us who are workaholics, there's something to be kind of afraid of in heaven. But for those of us who are workaholics, we can look forward to purgatory. And when I say those of us who are workaholics, I don't think I really fall into that category. But I do believe that many do. I'm just trying to be sympathetic, right? But for those who are workaholics, heaven presents something fearful. What? You mean I'm not going to be able to build houses in heaven? You mean they'll already be built? You mean in heaven I won't be able to crunch numbers to make sure that the books balance for God? God, look, you made a mistake here. You mean? And purgatory is what frees us from our attachment to our earthly attachments, to those things that keep us from God. And if these are keeping us from the Sabbath, we can already see how they keep us from God, right? So this is a beautiful message of hope. But the Pharisees look and say, aha, he healed on a Sabbath, he must be a sinner. The blind man counters that with a beautiful argument when he says, he healed me, and nobody who heals, who does the work of God, can be a sinner, therefore he's not a sinner. He must be something else that you're refusing to recognize. Oh, ask him yourself. That's the other line that I love. Yeah, I think that's enough. I think I've gone on and on. There's really a lot more. And St. John keeps playing these themes, and you hear these words over and over again. And you hear some of them in each of the stories that we hear. There's one more scrutiny. So we're going to hear another passage from John, from John's Gospel, where he says another I am. And it's another way for us to take a look at our sin. So last weekend, we heard Jesus tell us one thing. This weekend, we hear him say, I am the light. I am the light that you need. Next week, we'll hear something else. So we're making our way through this. I don't know if I get to talk to you next week or not, depending on what happens after Mass and those sorts of things on Tuesday, but just so you know what's going on. Thanks for listening. God bless. Mm-hmm.